This is Midrash Metzora, and it's entitled 7 Slanderers Who Paid the Ultimate Price. And this stands in stark contrast to last week's portion, Tazria. We were talking about this kind of spiritual leprosy, Tzorat, and it was an amazing early warning system that was built in those days, where if you were engaging in slander and malicious speech, you broke out in this kind of what looked like leprosy, and you had an ability to repair your ways. And so it was something really amazing and mystical. But now we're talking about something very different. Again, it's slander, but there's different nuances you will see in each of the 7 cases that we're going to bring now, that they take on different kind of expression than what we're used to. And most importantly, the consequences are irreparable. Instead of repairing the damage, these cases all are of people who lost their share in the world to come. The list starts with 3 Jewish kings, Yerovam, Achav, and Manasseh. We're not going to go through those cases, but it's obvious that when you're in a king, and let's say as most of them did, spreading idol worship, so that sort of magnifies your sin, and it's easy to see why these kings would have lost their share in the world to come. I'd like to focus on the 4 who are not kings. And the first one is Bilam. So Bilam seems easy, right? Everybody knows that there's a whole parsha that is devoted to his lies that he spread. The only irony is he didn't actually spread any lies because God didn't allow him to. God miraculously changed his curses to blessings. So that's one interesting nuance, is that even if you wanted to say lashon hara, malicious speech, but you weren't allowed to, your punishment could be so severe that you lose your world to come. The next on the list is Doeg. Now Doeg actually told King Saul, when King Saul was running after David and trying to kill him, Doeg reported that David was hiding out in this city called Nov, Irakonim. It was a city of priests, and Doeg didn't kill anybody, but by ratting out David, so then Shaul sent troops, and they slaughtered every man, woman, and child in the city of Nov, which parenthetically brings up an interesting idea in the Midrash, which sort of plagues the Jewish people and maybe plagues all society, that sometimes when you are very liberal to those who are guilty, then you tend to be very repressive to those that are innocent. And of course, liberal to those who are guilty is talking about kings, the king of Amalek, which Shaul did not kill, even though he was ordered to. And that's how he lost his kingship. And here is the case of being, overly oppressive to innocent people, the men, women, and children of Nov. The next one is Achitophel. So we have 2 interesting stories about him. One is the fact that when David's son of Shalom was rebelling, so he took the side of Shalom. And in fact, he told Avshalom that if you better take care of King David right away, because if he has time to regroup, you'll never get him. And since it didn't happen that way, they paused and did not take care by killing King David, so he took his own life. Another interesting story that happened before this, when he was in good terms with King David. So King David was excavating and trying to take measures in order to build the Beit HaMikdash, and there was some water started rising up, and this water was threatening to take over Jerusalem, Israel, perhaps the whole world. And King David knew that in order to stop the water from rising, he had to write God's name on a shard and throw it into the water. But he also knew that in that process, he would erase God's name. And that, of course, is prohibited to erase God's name. So he asked, what is the official Jewish law? What does it say about this? And Achitophel knew the law. He was a great scholar, but he didn't volunteer any information until David put out a threat saying, whoever knows and doesn't tell me he should be strangled to death. And then he told him, yes, you are allowed to do this. So it could be that it came true, and it's another interesting nuance on what it means to be Lashon Hara. In this case, it's withholding information, and that is such a severe crime that perhaps that also got him to lose his world to come. Okay, so the last example is Gehazi. If you remember the story, he was the personal assistant to the great prophet Elisha, and there was a king in Aram named Naaman who was plagued with leprosy. Nothing and no one in his country could heal it. He came to the land of Israel. He was finally told to go see this great prophet Elisha, and Elisha said, all you have to do is dip into the Jordan River and you'll be cured. And Naaman was amazingly impressed. There was no charge for his fees, and there was something so spiritual about the fact that only in Israel could he get this cure, only in this river. And it began to change perhaps his whole mindset about the Jewish people and about God. And who knows what would have happened, but for the fact that the assistant to the prophet Gehazi intervened and unfortunately ruined it all by running after Naaman and saying, no, my master has changed his mind. He wants to charge you for giving you this advice of where to go dip in the Jordan River. And this was, of course, a tremendous Chilul Hashem, a tremendous desecration of God's name. So here you have a case. Again, it's in the category of malicious speech, and yet it is, of course, very, very serious. And it's interesting to see the connection, because when you're basically doing a Chilul Hashem, you're desecrating God's name. It's as if you are speaking malicious talk against God, and that perhaps that's how it fits into this category. And of course, the consequences were fatal, that Gehazi lost his share in the world to come.